Hi, it's Daniel Stein, and this is our National Interoperability Collaborative meeting, the week of actually Wednesday, August 31st, last day of summer in my book. Anyway, it should be a good session about Hennepin County and the proof of concept we are hoping to implement with them. There you go. And now we're going to attempt to show a slide. Do I have a big black box on my screen? Or we resolved that?
Nope, looks good.
Oh, good. I must have upgraded on the Zoom thing. I keep getting blacking out on my screen. So, so welcome everybody. It's been a busy couple of weeks, I think. Everybody traveling and going to places. I know we canceled last week. We've got some real interesting stuff today, just sort of just put together because of people's vacation schedules and stuff like that. So, but we're gonna do our welcome and intros like usual. A couple of key takeaways from the C4BH conference. Robbie agreed to kind of do a review of that, and other folks who are on the call certainly chime in and different perspectives on what that looks like. It looked like it was a kind of a happening that was great. And then Connor Johnson from Hennepin County has agreed to say, hey, Connor has agreed to sort of do a little deeper dive into what's happening on the proof of concept for Hennepin, and figured it would be a good time to talk about that at this juncture in time. So he's going to walk us through kind of a conversation on that. And that's what we've got. And then the next couple of weeks, we've got some really good things. Next week, we have the folks from the Digital Locker that Mary Sarah Jones had recommended are going to present about their Digital Locker, especially for like CBOs who don't have document management or electronic records. So a way to capture that, which looks good. And then earlier in the week, we had a conversation between DC, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, and the folks from Arizona who are working on diversion programs and other real interesting justice and cross-disciplinary work, because DC's got a lot of issues with gun violence now. So that was a really good conversation. They've agreed to come and talk with us about what they're doing there, and they've got some really amazing engagement models. So Arizona will be on the calendar. And then our folks from University of Texas in Austin we're trying to get a date later in September as well to get an update on the stuff that's happening there with the LEAP next version of LEAP CDS and the work they're doing in Austin. So there's a couple of things scheduled that will be a little more diligent now that this is the last, in my book, this is the last day of summer. Once we get into September, it's all downhill from there. Anyway, so we've got some new, what? I don't know if you agree. I don't know if you're just agree with that or not, but so we have a couple of people on the call that we want to say hello. At least one new person, Mr. Welkening. Hello, Mike. Glad you made it.
Hello.
Greetings, greetings. Our tradition, Mike, is just to have ask new people to say hello and where they're from.
All right. So I'm Mike Wilkening. I'm a senior advisor with the Office of Management and Budget, working on a project out of the President's Customer Experience EO.
Welcome. Glad you made it. And Sanjeev. I don't think we've met. Are you there? Nope.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry,
Okay.
took me a while to get off mute. I'm Sanjeev Tandon. I'm at the CDC. I'm the lead for the Public Health Interoperability Program and work closely with CMS and ONC. Thank you.
Fantabulous. Great. Welcome. Great. So, Mr. Claire, St. Clair.
Yes, sir. I was just going to mention to you that I had a great meeting with the Office of eHealth Innovation from Colorado today. and they are very interested in attending Project Unify meetings. I mean, I think you saw the email correspondence on it, but I wanted to just bring it out for the group. You can expect their participation. They have a consent working group as well, and they're very interested to learn more about our work with Kathy and the Inc. project.
That's great. Is Christine, are you on the line yet? I don't know if you're. She's here. So no, she's not here. So the it'll be interesting to see what the connection is with the work through David Alliard and also Jennifer Hall. If they know each other there. I don't know if.
Could you refresh my memory as to what offices that David and Jennifer have?
So David is part of the university and a faculty there, and trying to bring together in a number of different counties work that's happening.
Got it. Cool.
And Jennifer has been she's part of the governor's office on trying to do human services coordination. She's usually on these calls. And we've been in discussions with them and trying to get, healthcare services and human services in Colorado talking to each other has been, it's an ongoing project.
Yeah, that's really cool because the Office of eHealth Innovation is technically part of the Office of the Governor, so they should be like down the hall from each other.
Yeah, I don't understand their structure, but healthcare is had been very separated out, and I don't know if they've successfully reintegrated it back in after they took it out. I know they've been doing a lot of work on that for many years to get there. So.
Well, they just pulled out behavioral health as well into its own organization. And they've got a whole statewide transformation around behavioral health happening.
Yeah, they do. I'm sorry, I was just going to add, Mary Sarah, you're exactly right. And I've actually got a separate conversation channel open with the CMS open source program office and the Colorado behavioral health folks through digital services around that too. Yeah, good point.
I see Christine is on. Did you hear, Christine, were you on when Jim was talking about the Colorado folks?
I did not hear what Jim had to say, but that work has been the basis of a lot of the work that David Aylward and I have been doing in Colorado, is really, taking advantage of that work. Some of the legislation in the last legislative session went into requiring there to be cross-sector care coordination. So that actually got written into legislation, and there are funded positions to do that. But the IT piece is still a little bit of a black box to me. So I mean, the folks from Correo and QHN and whatever are clearly the leaders there. But and then their plan with their ship the SHE and putting out an RFP, it's all there still seems to be some redundancy and some confusion there from my standpoint. But
that's well said, Christine, based on the feedback I've gotten from other parties.
Yeah. But all of those folks sit on the steering committee for this collaborative community response that I've been working on there that really tried to help shape some of the legislation and move things in the direction of cross-sector collaboration and cross-sector information sharing.
That's great. I think, part of the value here, just keeping the cadence of these meetings is just even to connect the dots, because even within our group of 25 people or so that are connected, there's a lot of, touching of the ends of the network, and to continue to connect those is a real value to trying to do this work ultimately. So, pile on. I must have quit doing our exercises, but let me just mute whoever is. All right, trying to mute other folks here that are making background noise.
I think Adam had a lot of noise going on because I could see.
I
his
do.
box
I
lighting
apologize.
up.
Okay.
I'm in a car. I apologize. I'm going on mute.
Disruptive as usual, Adam.
It's my goal in life.
Welcome to the call. Glad you're here. So let's dive in. Couple of things. So following the e-consent discovery workshop, I had a debrief with Stefan and shared with him our conversation here and the notes from our debrief, and also actually shared with him the recording of our debrief, which was the day after the ONC meeting. We had a great conversation, and as you can imagine, these sort of swimming in follow up, and he and Tricia are figuring out next steps about what to do. But I was very appreciative of having some debrief activities going on already with that. So, but I don't know what their timing is. We didn't talk about anything, what next steps might be on their side. I suspect it, probably for sure next year, maybe even next calendar year, but we'll stay tuned to that. I think, we gave them a lot of content and I think we contributed to a really good workshop. So I know a lot of people have mentioned it or talked about it, and it's been great to be able to sort of push that out into social media as well, to have ONC doing that work. So so thanks to them for that. I don't know if anyone else has had interactions at all with ONC around that at all. If so, no. Okay. So with that, I didn't mean to go forward there. Robbie, would you spend some time talking a little bit about the panel and kind of what the observation was, and then other folks who want to contribute, just sort of put something into the chat or just join the conversation. I know a couple people were there.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Daniel, and good to see everyone. Yeah, last week I know a few of you were at Civitas. I got to see Mary, Sarah, and Jim in real life, so that was cool. And I think overall the conference was kind of great, one to be in person, but also I think learn a lot from other organizations and states in terms of what's been going on in kind of the HIE data sharing world. And just one of the presentations that that was included on the agenda, excuse me, included one focus on California that my colleague Timmy Leslie, who also with Blue Path Health and the Connecting for Better Health Coalition, helped to moderate with John Ohanian, who's our Director for Data Insights and Innovation on within Cal HHS, which is our super agency for Health and Human Services, and then also Lori Hack from Mazars and the State Association of HIEs, as well as Katie Hydorn, who's with Insure the Uninsured Project, which is a consumer advocacy group. Had a really good conversation on kind of how this state, reached the point where it is now, where there is a framework and a data sharing agreement, kind of after, several attempts over the past 20 plus years around HIE in the state, and what it took this time to really get political will to move forward on this new approach to advancing data exchange in the state. I think a couple takeaways that we noticed that came through in the conversation included, the importance of including principles to really guide this work. And, I think too that I anticipate at some point they'll be helpful to really point back to, especially when, there might be disagreements or political issues arise, to be able to point back to this set of agreed to principles that are included in the framework. The first of which being is health equity itself. I think additionally is the real involvement of state agencies in the advisory group that the state put together to put together the ultimate data exchange framework. I think, I know in other states, the involvement of state agencies, health agencies and beyond in data sharing is mixed sometimes, or their involvement in HIEs. I think we still have work to do in California in terms of getting state agencies to sign on to the data sharing agreement. But, I think one reflection was that it was great to at least have them at the table and help shape these documents as they were being formed. And then I think the other is just the real willingness of the state to put together just a stakeholder group that other organizations could plug into and provide public comments on, and at the same time really kind of drive home the real need to advance data sharing in California. And there's an interesting kind of push and pull around whether, is California behind other states, or is this maybe going to help the state kind of leapfrog over other states? Maybe something in between. But there was, good discussion around, the kind of unique approach that California has taken at this point in putting together a data sharing agreement and a framework, and how this potentially could be a model for other states that maybe have struggled to advanced health and other information sharing in their states as well. So I think those were some of the reflections from that session. There were some other great ones around reproductive health data sharing, and thinking about how we can kind of collaboratively think about how to maybe help protect data in certain instances. What are some legal avenues to protecting reproductive health data in the kind of post-Roe era. There were some other sessions too that I missed around standards and TEFCA and such, but I think it was overall really informative. And I would also just point to the keynote address on the second day by Stephen Posnick from ONC around health, like guiding with health equity in mind with all the work we do, which I think came through in this panel as well. Really thinking of health equity as a principle guiding our approaches and frameworks, and not necessarily just as not presuming it to be an output without kind of thinking about it and incorporating it up front. So I thought that was helpful too. I don't know if folks maybe had other things they wanted to share, or sessions that they found helpful.
I had one question while people are thinking, and I just pulled these 3 slides off of your the link. So in the notes in the agenda, there's a link to the newsletter, which is, you guys do a great newsletter, and this is in there. So, and I'll also put it up on the hub, but I thought it was pretty clear. One of the 2 questions. One is they didn't talk about consent. So, so I don't know that. The other comment that I know is we've talked about here in the past is this is really medical, clinical data, patient. So we have to temper our enthusiasm a little bit.
Yes, well, and I think that's one thing we've realized in our coalition too. And I've been having some offline conversations with social services groups, and Mary Sarah, I know Timmy connected with you, and I've connected with Courtney around putting together some initial workshops so that we can help start those conversations with HHS in the room when it comes to thinking about what are the needs of social care or social services. I think that's definitely been a gap, and if we're going to support whole person care, that's going to be critical. I think the other, just on that last slide, a couple things rise to the fore there too. What governance is going to look like. So the state agency is going to have to, propose legislation in the next session to have statutory authority to, create a permanent governance body, and also to enforce the mandate that is supposed to go into effect. The other thing I would just raise too, which I know you just mentioned, Daniel, is around identity and consent. And I know there's a great session at Civitas around patient identity and resolution. And, I think there's also been good ideas percolating in our coalition as well. And I'm kind of ruminating on and would love to plan, at one of our meetings to focus on that topic even more. kind of asking the state first, what would be helpful to them as they look to move beyond their digital identity strategy to the next steps. But I think that's another area, like you mentioned, where I think there's some room for even more detail as the state looks to put together a real plan, figure out how to secure, funding, ideally like CMS match or other funds to support that work as well.
So I stand to correct myself because consent is on this last slide, 1.5. So I'll accept the apology. But that's great to know. It's a whole other proverbial kettle of fish that I know a lot of people. That's why I think what we're doing is so important, because I think we're holding up that banner in a lot of ways, and have been holding it up for a lot of years. And the other complicated.
Daniel?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, can I go back to something Robbie mentioned about in terms of the theme around health equity for a second?
Of course.
And I don't want to make this a bigger conversation because I think it probably is. But in some of the work that I'm doing in counties and in different states, the whole conversation around SOGI data gets really bogged down at a lot of different levels. And in an attempt to tie that back to health equity, sort of the messaging is, well, our EHR doesn't collect it, our state doesn't want it, our HIE doesn't grab it either. And so just take your pick. Those are just some of the things that people say. So I was just curious, Robbie, in your travels, and maybe it's just California specific at this point, but are you hearing conversations around SOGI data at all tied to health equity? And it has to be. And I feel like unless you're asking about it, it's not going to happen.
I agree. I can speak from the California perspective. There was a bill introduced this year by a consumer advocacy group in the state that would have required health plans to start collecting SOGI and race, ethnicity, and language data. It got held in a committee this summer. So it's not getting out. I think that the one other venue where this actually may come up is the Department of Managed Healthcare, which regulates most of the health plans. They do have an equity, they were mandated last year to form this equity and quality review committee to kind of bring in an equity lens to, the quality side of the house that the regulators are involved in. I think there is an opportunity there, and I haven't been tracking it as closely because I actually thought this bill was just going to pass, to be quite frank with you, and I'm trying to figure out why it did not pass. But I think there's an opportunity there for this data to be collected, and then with Medi-Cal, I think there's definitely always opportunity to work with the Department of Healthcare Services to figure out how they can work with managed care plans, to better collect this data. I think post-procurement and, given the focus of CalAIM on health equity too.
Appreciate your comments. Thank you.
I'm glad Mary Sarah, I'm looking at the
Thanks for dropping that, Mary Sarah. And there hasn't been more detail kind of released beyond the strategy that the state put out, but I think you raise a good question. And I think some of these questions were raised at Civitas too around patient identity. And I'd love to we did post comments on that, and thank you, Jim, and many of you here who helped me with those comments. I think that it seems like it's really ripe for a conversation, at one of our regular coalition meetings on the topic. And I think relatedly, as has been mentioned too, that consent needs to be part of that discussion as well. So I'd love to follow up with you all, plus, my team, to figure out when's an appropriate time to do that. And I'm working to kind of connect first with the state to understand, where they're at, what would be helpful for them in terms of feedback. And I'd love to, schedule a time for us with our regular programming.
And I think it's Mary Sarah. I think it's really important for folks from this group to comment in there is an intent to include the human services, but there's not a lot of voice at the table right now. And some of the approaches in healthcare don't necessarily translate well. So kind of making sure that the structure and the architecture and everything is going to have the flexibility that when we get to the point of adding human services, it actually works. One example might be, I got into a long conversation with someone about opt-in, opt-out, and them wanting to use opt-out as a mechanism for all data, including human services. That's a really scary notion. It may not be from a HIPAA perspective, but it is when you step outside of HIPAA. And so making sure that there's kind of that visibility to the broader scope, I think is really important.
Well, that's, it rings true that that voice, it's just a perpetual sort of having the voice at the table. That's something that we certainly would like to continue contributing to as best we can. And we'd love to be able to figure out ways, and we are actively trying to figure out ways to increase our resources to be able to do more active kind of engagement like that. And the work that Blue Path does there is really great to be tracking all that stuff and connecting the dots. So we're out there trying to do that. And I hope that we can, as this develops, I hope that we can engage more closely on making that happen. Couple more questions here. I don't know if there's anything in the chat that Jim or Mary Sarah needs to respond to.
In policy, not placement. Take care. Have a nice walk.
Okay, moving along. Rita, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, Rita asked a question asking me to comment on my commentary about inequality in IA level 2. And what I was just saying is that I think both in Civitas it came up as well as other discussions that that IA level 2 and its prescriptive manner for identity verification potentially generates a quantitative measure of inequality by the percentage of people that can't complete an IA level 2 or don't have the documentation, or potentially could meet IA level 2 through a servicing CBO that sees them regularly and engages with them, but there's no mechanism to provide that as identity verification into EHRs, into a patient records, or for health information exchange. This came up as a hot topic in the care quality patient identity management group. I mean, really hot, some heated words, because we essentially said by adopting IA level 2, we have to admit we're going to leave a certain percentage of the population at the table.
And I think too, just, I guess, translating that into, what more needs to be, and I know we discussed this, Jim, is, what implications does that have, for California and Cal HHS as they, look to put something together around patient identity and patient matching at a statewide level. So I think that's where, our minds went in terms of, is there something else we can do with our, convening capability through the coalition to have that conversation, with the lens of the digital identity strategy that the state has put together.
Are there any funded pilots that are specific around the issue that you're raising, Jim, and essentially funded pilots to target the kinds of communities that are going to have greater struggle access, proving their identity, et cetera, like homeless immigrant populations, et cetera, and actually trying to problem solve for either best practices or alternatives or whatever it might be? Do you know anybody who's funding these things?
Oh.
At the issue of equity?
I think he just had a sign off. He's on.
Okay.
Yeah. He was on the way to an appointment. I doubt it. I'm sure there are going to be a million pilots, right? I know that even with ACEs, there were 100 different pilots going on across the state. So the question will be if they can coordinate them when they start to roll it out, because that's one of the, that's my question, which I don't think we have time to answer now, but is it's great to have state level data sharing agreements, et cetera, but how do you handle the counties? Because there's 58 counties who have all the same issues. And did that come up in the conversation at all?
I
know the answer.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you know, I think in the Civitas one, it was a little higher level. I think in other conversations I have, it always comes up. And you know, I think one thing I am exploring even within counties is we kind of look to put together these workshops and are just talking to healthcare organizations and CBOs, is that often the two cohorts are not talking or meeting with each other, as they may be building out pilots, or there are multiple initiatives going on at the same time. For example, just talking with folks in LA County, there are multiple efforts underway to screen folks for homelessness or housing instability within the county right now, and at least 5 different solutions are being deployed to do that, but there's no like undergirding strategy or way to share the data even right now, and it's just a bit of a mess in terms of who's using what tool to screen for homelessness, and how is that getting captured either by a managed care plan or a CBO.
So like, just to be so my question was about like going into the homeless population, into those communities, engaging with those CBOs that are engaging with these populations and that are used to kind of helping them with collecting various forms of ID, and then trying to capture and document the problems on the human level, right?
So
on that relationship level, right? Of like,
yep.
Like, that's what I meant by, yeah.
So Mike,
go ahead.
Matt, that's actually a perfect segue into Connor, because that's exactly kind of, I think, what we're talking about doing in Hennepin. So let me just cut you off because we've kind of run a little bit long here. So I want to make sure that we have a half an hour or so to talk about the work of Hennepin and what's happening there, because Hennepin is one of, in addition to New York, Hennepin has identified and stepped forward to be one of the MVP POCs and have been working diligently. We've been talking and working diligently, and they've been doing a lot of work internally to line up all of the people and places and organizations. So we've talked about it. I know Connor's given a high level, quick kind of overview. So we're just going to take a little bit more time today to kind of talk about it, because I think all these things connect together here, and it's good to hear what's going on as we move into the fall now. So Connor, do I need to? You got a couple slides, and keep it open conversation, I think.
Yeah, sounds great. So yeah, if you can give me the opportunity to share my screen, I can just pull the slides in.
You got it.
Okay, great. Can you see my screen? I'll put it in presentation mode.
Yep, got it.
Cool. All right, hopefully the slides are coming up.
Yep.
Great. All right. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Connor Johnson. I'm with Hennepin County. I think I've been on the calls, but I've met most of you virtually. But if you don't know, I'm the model of care coordinator. So I've been working for the last year with Hennepin County to do a model of care really focused on people who are experiencing homelessness and housing instability in our healthcare system. So that's all of our ED departments and clinics across Hennepin County. Hennepin County is situated in surrounds Minneapolis and suburbs surrounding Minneapolis, Minnesota. It's the largest county in the state, the most populous county, and geographically is really central. And we see a lot of people who are experiencing homelessness across the county, and especially in our healthcare system. And so I'll just walk through an overview of kind of what we've been working on with the model of care, how we've come to this decision that we really want to focus on consent, and doing a pilot of consent utility and working with Stewards of Change Institute to better understand what that will entail and what that looks like. So I'll just walk through kind of an overview of the model of care, our intentions with the model of care, and then why we're doing this pilot and what we're hoping to experience with the pilot. So just quick, agenda for what I can talk about, and it's conversational. So feel free to add in the chat. I'll check the chat too if you have questions, or feel free to come off mute and ask questions as they come up. I'll run through. I have 8 slides, so just walk through kind of what the model of care looks like, what we've learned so far from the work we've done, why this has informed our work with consent and consent utility, and then really talk about kind of where we are at Hennepin County, where this is fitting into larger initiatives around IT infrastructure and data sharing and consent across Hennepin County. So just a quick overview. Again, like I said, the model of care started with really looking at people experiencing homelessness, housing instability in our healthcare system, and how do we better serve the patient? How do we make this more person-centered? Really looking at reducing medical spend, improving health outcomes for the patients, for the individuals, and also being more efficient with our medical spend and how we are actually able to serve individuals in our healthcare system without really, having people go to the ED department for their primary care clinic. How do we help people better prioritize preventative health care when possible, while also stabilizing in a housing setting? What we did in the last year is we really worked to bring our departments together. So you can see in the graphic we have, it's a little bit small, but we have the graphic shows all our different county departments. Like most counties, we're fairly siloed, fairly there's a lot of challenge around communication across departments, even within departments. But what we did is we brought our Hennepin healthcare department together with our Hennepin Health, which is our managed HMO, our health plan for the county, with our housing stability team, public health. Our also North Point Health and Wellness is a branch of our Hennepin Health care system. It's its own clinic and hospital and part of a system kind of tangentially. And then we also brought our criminal justice system together as well. These were kind of the high touch points for people who are experiencing homelessness across Hennepin County. We did a data sharing agreement, which seems pretty basic and fun, rudimentary, but it actually was the largest kind of data sharing agreement that we had across all these departments to share data. And what we found through all of that work and kind of, level setting and groundwork and data sharing is that we found 2,600 individuals roughly who are experiencing homelessness in our healthcare system who are members of Hennepin Health, our health plan. As you can see, some of just kind of quick demographics. The average age is 41, which we were surprised about. It was much younger group than we thought. We obviously know that people who are experiencing homelessness tend to have shorter life expectancy if they have chronic, housing instability. But also it was a younger population than we thought. It was a group that we did expect to have a high number of people experiencing who are have some form of disability, both physical and mental health disabilities. It was predominantly male, which we expected, predominantly Black African American, and we have a disproportionality of people who are a Native American, Indian, or Alaskan Native. So that's kind of just general high-level demographics to just give you a quick overview. So this is our pilot population that we're working with, and we'll be using the consent utility pilot with this population. Key learnings, just kind of what we've found so far and why we're moving towards this pilot is because we really see that we need to better align our health systems. We need to really work towards interoperability, which is, the word that Stewards of Change Institute has taught us and has continued to emphasize as far as our work interdepartmentally, and just really provide better care coordination with better data sharing. So these are words from Stewards of Change Institute, but what we've taken is when we've presented this to our board and we've gotten buy-in from our county health board, from our leadership across Hennepin County, is really working towards that interoperability work, really making sure that we are able to do this consent pilot and really work to understand our cohort and understand the needs of our cohort and what data sharing means for those 2,600 individuals, and using that to inform our work. And if we can do this with our most highly vulnerable, medically vulnerable, instably housed, unhoused individuals, then we feel like that there's key learnings that we can take from this pilot to work with other populations across Hennepin County.
Let me just pause for a moment.
Yeah.
I can't bear the opportunity not to say more about interoperability, but
Sure. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't know what the knowledge was in the room or not. So feel free to do more discussion, Daniel. So.
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to also point at Chris's question a little bit earlier around identifying the cohorts. She's asking, touching 2 or more agencies, or maybe, I don't know if you've defined that more, if you wanted to talk about that a second bit.
Yeah, definitely. So so it was anyone, we took anyone who's being flagged as experiencing homelessness across any of this, like in any of the systems. So if they were flagged in our healthcare system, our housing stability system, if they were being flagged in our public health system. So any of those flags, they all had different indicators. Every data system has a different that we work with, which includes our HMIS, our Homelessness Management Information System, EPIC, which manages our healthcare information and our healthcare database, our Department of Health and Human Services from the state of Minnesota that manages our public health data. So all these different systems. So we looked at if anyone was being flagged in any of those systems as homeless, they were included in the cohort. So they didn't have to be flagged twice. It was just a one-time incident. And we did do a 5-year look back. So we looked back at patterns, but we're using the last year of data to find the 2,600 individuals. There are people who are have or currently experiencing homelessness. So there are some people who may now be housed, who will not be maybe needing housing services, but still medically vulnerable individuals. We haven't prioritized based on like a frequent flyer system yet. So it's 2,600 individuals and there's no prioritization. It's just that group. And yeah, the next cohort. So I think what we'll do is it's not a static list of 2,600 individuals. That list will start to evolve and change as we start to continue, to engage with that group. There will be some people who will realize now are housed and will not be included in this cohort, or will be moved on from the cohort. There are some people who are going to, who are experiencing homelessness now that we haven't engaged with, or so it'll kind of be this dynamic list that we're keeping, but roughly 2,600 individuals, that pilot population, and starting with Hennepin Health Plan members because it's our county health plan, and really using that because we have control over the health plan and being able to really access that information. But the plan is to work with other health plans as well, so working with United Healthcare, working with other health plans across Blue Cross, MN as well. So hope that answered that question. If there are other questions, you can feel free to come off mute, anyone, or put it in the chat.
Do you think there are people that are not captured in any of those systems that are, do you think you have an accurate count of folks that are homeless?
I think there's possibility for, people that are not being, there are definitely people who are probably in the healthcare system who are experiencing homelessness that we maybe have not fully identified as experiencing homelessness or housing instability. So I think that there will be at some point an increase once we start to do more. We haven't, as a county in our healthcare system, we've had kind of disparate, I would say, effort around really identifying people and then who are experiencing homelessness and trying to get them connected to services. So the model of care and doing this pilot has given us the opportunity to like kind of bring all these various efforts together under kind of one umbrella, and hopefully with that create some standardization around how we identify, how we track people experiencing homelessness in our healthcare and housing systems.
And Connor, I think Chris was also asking about people who would show up in a system as being at risk of homelessness. So for example, if they had been screened with a housing instability vital sign measure, so they're not currently homeless, but they, look like they're on a track where that could happen. Is that, is that something under consideration as well, or going to deal with those who are flagged as truly homeless first? And then that's, like you said, we kind of move on to the next things later.
No, part of the work will be also prevention. And if we can work on prevention and connecting to prevention resources, we have a whole team at our housing stability team that does prevention work. And so really trying to be, if we can be as predictive as possible with our predictive analytics and really understanding, getting some of those key indicators when we know someone is also at risk is the goal as well. So that I'd say we're not there yet. It's a future state for us for sure, but that would be the goal, is that we don't want people to have to become literally homeless to then get connected to services. Prevention will definitely be part of that work as well.
Great, thank you.
Eric Yan here. Connor is on the, I guess, the extreme opposite side of what Christine was referencing. Are you also looking at the most, chronic homeless that are tracked in the HMIS? Are you able to get that longitudinal information out of the regional HMIS, or or the county HMIS, or is that data not part of the current mix?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've kept it as like a pool right now of 2,600 individuals, but we do have the opportunity to really look at chronicity based on length of time experiencing homelessness, and also look at utilization of our healthcare system. So really looking at high utilization, people who are experiencing homelessness, who are coming into our ED department maybe 15 times a year because they don't have a place to go and their chronic health condition is causing them to have to come to the ED department 15, 20 times a year. So really looking looking at chronic homelessness and high medical utilization and vulnerability as well. Eventually. Yeah. Great question.
I might also say that, you guys, Hennepin has been on this road for a while. Like San Diego and Montgomery County and Allegheny County, Arlington County, Fairfax, there's a bunch of counties across the country that have been working hard on these issues. So before, when I was asking the question, Robbie, about the counties, what's really interesting is because Minnesota is a same kind of situation, right, with a state supervised, county administered, which is really important for child welfare, but also Medicaid, right, and everything else. So we have a double opportunity to learn here, and it becomes applicable at New York is the same structure as well with the state and county and California. So probably need some state supervised, state administered pilot when we get this thing going as well. But
yeah, definitely. I can keep going. Okay.
Oh, just really quick question, Connor. Are you guys planning on basing it off of like the CDS LEAP work, or do you just not have any of the technical aspect started yet, or is there some sort of other path you guys are choosing to do as far as implementation?
That's a great question. I'm not actually familiar with the CDS LEAP work.
It's like San Diego's CIE's consent prototype, and then that's being kind of adopted, I would say, by the Human and Social Services group that ACF has in their part of Health Level 7, and they're kind of taking Leap CDS is like a, I don't know, like a precursor to their consent utility. But
Yeah.
you know, there's a lot of work to be done.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm in full kind of disclosure. We're still new to kind of exploring what the options of consent will look like, and working with the jurisdictions to really figure out that collaboration. So I would say, yeah, So Jim's saying we've joined, and yeah, we will definitely work. You know, want to be part of this national work to get best practices and understand what, you know, how to inform our local project here. So
that's you know, that's part of, if Brian had a voice, because he's got I think if Brian's on, I know he's got COVID, so he's laying low from Civitas, was a party favor from Civitas.
Unless you really want to hear me cough.
I was just going to say that's part of the curriculum, and you know, part of the interoperability work is to get people in the county to start to speak the same language around systems change, and to understand the various domains that people are working in, and the various data systems, and the various legal. There's so many things that we don't know about our partners and the other silos. And so we references very briefly interoperability here, but they went through a 20-hour course, which we offer on systems change, which really brings together a lot of the interoperability and data sharing and user-centered design and legal stuff. And so they, along with 4 other counties, were part of the cohort we did about 2 years ago, I guess. So it's part of the plan here. What's exciting for me and for us is that Hennepin has really been building towards this for many years anyways. And then to start to really make an investment in creating a common language, which in my opinion, if you don't spend the time there, the technology can come, right? And that freaks people out enough. After the lawyers freak them out, technology will freak them out. But if we don't have a common, you know, ontologies basically. And so, you know, it's happening, which is great. And I applaud you guys for sort of doing the work and sticking with it as long as you have. So.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it's been, you know, I think when we talk about kind of what we've been presenting to the health board and to our different leadership in the county, it's like a lot of work just around, common language, like you're saying, Daniel, and just actually getting data use agreements in place and getting people to agree that this is something that they want to do, because we're always adding in addition to people's work and capacity, and there's long-term efficiencies that'll come out of it, but it takes a while to get people on board. So yeah, so a lot of our work to date has just been getting everyone engaged and interested in this pilot. But
which is really exciting, and how much work that is, you know. And that's been my soapbox as I've been whining to potential funders and government agencies. It's like, hey, everybody's lined up. You know, people have spent a long time aligning all the people and organizations, and that's what's unique about it. It's not like, hey, we got a good idea, let's go find someone to do it. People are ready to do it. And,
yeah, definitely. Well, I'll go to the next slide here, and then feel free to, if there are questions that come up, let me know. There's a lot of words on this slide, but this is what we've been promoting with our leadership at Hennepin County, is really why we want to do this. And it's to create efficiencies, to really empower patients with their data sharing and understand what their data is being used for as far as care coordination. And we are in the process of really engaging people with lived experience in the process. So we have a number of lived experience boards at Hennepin County, and we're planning to this fall do a few of these kind of workshops with people who have lived experience of being unhoused or being in our healthcare system as people who are unhoused, and really getting understanding of what their interests and what their experience has been to better inform the pilot. And then, we think that if we can do this, then with our most vulnerable, then we have opportunity to do this with populations that maybe have more access to technology, have more access to, are stably housed, but are still in our healthcare system. So we feel like there's some really key learnings that can come out of this highly vulnerable pilot. And then just quickly, a little bit of background context of where this is falling in Hennepin, because a lot of our work has also been to figure out, everyone thinks it's a great idea, thinks it's great. It would be helpful to be able to share, care coordination and do all that. And everyone's like, it sounds great, but people are limited in their time to invest both time and from our departments financially to figure out kind of who's going to lead this work. So we've been able to move this into something that's happening at Hennepin called the Hennepin Resident Access Project, which is happening across our county, and it is led by our enterprise team to really do more data integration and to do more technology updates for the purpose of better efficiencies and communication across our departments. So this pilot has been adopted as part of, in the model of care, as part of this Hennepin Resident Access Project. And it's great for us to have this kind of larger foothold in the county and have this part of a larger initiative. So it's not just the model of care that has to do all this work, but it's in collaboration and alignment with other initiatives at the county as well. So that's everything that I had here. Well, here's our next steps. So we are working right now on community engagement. So we're doing these workshops, as I talked about, really getting feedback from people with lived experience. We're currently doing a landscape assessment of all current consents and opportunities for consolidation and how far we can really push from the legal and HIPAA and all those aspects, and where there is maybe opportunities for us to need to engage some of our legal and compliance teams as well, and really understanding what utilization looks like from a user perspective. We understand that on the back end, we have all these different departments and all these different teams and all these things. But from a user perspective, someone who's coming to our healthcare system or is going to services or getting, working with an outreach worker, to then Hennepin County is Hennepin County. It's one county. So they're not concerned of what's happening on the back end. And so how do we better make it person-centered? And then really understanding our technology needs. And this is where we've also been talking with Daniel and Christine and people as well, as what will that actually eventually entail? What is the consent pilot and what does that look like? So that's kind of our next steps this fall as we do more project planning to really figure out how we engage these 2,600 individuals with this pilot and really pilot our consent utility. Cool. I think that's everything.
Yeah, that's great. The train is leaving the station, which is great.
Yeah, we're starting. It feels like we've been, on our end, really kind of getting ready to get ready, but it feels like a lot of things are aligned here now that we have the opportunity to start doing some of this work and building in a process of really getting, feedback loops throughout this process so that we can adapt. And, it's an iterative pilot, but really start moving.
One thought as we were thinking about user stories, you may be familiar with our Thompson family. But if not, we should look at that because we built out under the INC program, which looks there's a lot of components to it, but cross domain needs are described in this family, the Thompson family. So it's a scenario with 5 personas and a dad and mom and
including multiple housing situations. So
yeah,
a dad who's kind of a chronic homeless at this point, and and at risk of homelessness for mom and kids. So we've got that built out, and I think Mary's on the call. She kind of has these personas in her grasp.
Great. Yeah, any that would be helpful to, I don't think I've seen those, but it would be great to look at and to really review. And just any ways to kind of communicate the challenges with like the nuance of everything for the patient. It's not as easy as we always think it's going to be, and just kind of those challenges to help us better inform what this consent pilot will look like, because we understand it is challenging for patients to know kind of who they're working with and what's happening and all those things. So
Brian, do I have a recollection? We did something with homelessness, or Eric, right? Didn't we do one of the early demos, had homeless, it got switched over to chronic homelessness, and it then went through OCL, right?
That was
Yeah,
our
we
very
had a-
first proof of concept.
Yeah.
You want to say a little bit about that?
I'd rather have Eric say a little bit about it later on.
I will, I'll chime in. So, so Open City Labs Navigator 360 integrated with HS Links, HM Homeless Management Information System. And we use FHIR to essentially subscribe to a change in homelessness status, and then did eligibility and enrollment and rental subsidies application. I believe that was the full demo last September 2021, or I guess.
Yeah. And then, even
I
further
think it was
along.
2020, guys.
2020? Was it
It was-
2020? Oh my gosh. It's
Yeah,
been
it was
that long.
2020.
2020.
But also there was, in our work, our use cases, we have a whole slew of like child welfare interactions with homelessness and with other, interactions with the family. So yeah.
Oh, that's right. That was a later one.
Yeah. So we have a lot of use cases to check out, Connor, as far as the Thompson family. And I think we actually populated some of these personas into my hands.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. So the synthetic data is there too. If Mary
Great.
wanted to chime in and say whether it still exists or not.
It does. Actually, the Interoperability Institute has a whole synthetic data team. And so I have a catalog of personas that we've developed and participated and helped to build out the Thompson use case, which was derived one of those original personas around opioid seeking. So there is a method to the madness, and then it ties back to not just the story, but actually creating a data set that is representative of that story that different systems can use then to play out interoperability utilities.
So so Brian just put the user stories in,
Great.
and then I put in above that, there's the actual, you can actually see the demos for folks who are, I've not seen that, but it's a great starting place from a actual, moving information around. It's really quite something. So everybody will be delighted. We were hoping that sort of from the time when we did that, as I recall, the actual implementation, it's, I guess COVID slowed things down a little bit, but it's great to be able to actually have a place to really sort of revisit that again and sort of focus our attention on the work together. So that's super.
And until the consent piece is fully worked out, having the synthetic data kind of helps bring everybody's anxiety levels down for, looking at the interoperability of the systems.
Definitely.
So that
Yeah.
should be great.
Well, and I think, Connor, for the Project Unify proof of concept, not just the synthetic data sets, but sandbox ecosystem, essentially a digital clone of a HIN that you can play out the scenarios and test interoperability. So would welcome Hennepin in that, in those endeavors.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, that sounds great. And I see the question from Matt, where we are in the process of like building the consent utility technology. We have our Chief Technology Officer, Craig Traska for Hennepin, working on kind of developing what that might look like and doing some of the just kind of idea prototyping locally, but also know that there's opportunities to work with everyone, through Stewards of Change and through our demonstration project to think about how we build out the actual technology and create that product. So yeah, we're in the kind of just initial planning phases and thinking that through what that might look like.
And you're not alone in that. Actually, one of the outcomes of Civitas is convening the national dialogue around the framework of what constitutes a health data utility. As always, the Europeans are a little further ahead than US markets and some thinking around this space, but putting together that framework so we can look at what it would mean to build a utility component or an end-to-end utility that the market would be ready to utilize.
Great. Yeah, definitely.
That's actually a part of the, I was intrigued by that by that discussion that was had, I believe, between, at Civitas. I know I've been talking with Evelyn and, Gravity Project and how that is coming together in some ways. And then, of course, Lisa Berry spoke here a couple of weeks ago or months ago about the health data utility, which is similar but different. I think we sort of embed in that. But within that larger context, it certainly is intriguing to think about actually the work we're doing on the social and human services side, informing that HIE work, right? And all that work that Catherine, Kathy is on there, and the Bronx Rio is really championing, right? So that's a big deal to be able to get, from the actual county implementation through to the HIE, through to a system level change. I mean, that's interoperability. So being able to stitch those things together is really important. So I've got a call with Evelyn next week to invite her to come sometime later in the month. And let's hear what's happening, especially with all the coding work and the implementation. There's crossover potentially in some of the, as I understand it, some of the potential implementation sites of the Gravity. I think Austin is going to be implementing some of those. Has anybody else sort of stepped up? Do we know?
There was another one mentioned in writing. Does someone else know who that is?
Yeah, so I don't know if those have actually been, I haven't seen those in writing. There's of course a lot of different groups and entities and HIEs that are working in this space and working with Gravity in that regard. They have 3 pilots, I think. Yeah. We can touch base with Evelyn to see what those are. They did announce at Civitas that Gravity will be folding under Civitas.
Well, it's the first level of discussion. There's a MOU to have the discussion along with HL7 to look at integrating Gravity. So it's not a done deal. It's really sitting on the executive board. Part of those conversations. So I know that is this a good marriage? It's almost like let's have the conversation. Is this going to move things forward? Because unfortunately, everything is underfunded or not funded for that matter, right? So the fact I take unfortunate pleasure in, I shouldn't even say it that way, but the work we're doing is I'm frankly disappointed and surprised that we haven't been able to raise the kind of money to support this work at scale, given the trillions of dollars that are being spent and the money that's sitting in state coffers. Maybe we're just not good enough at it. But it's hard to get this interstitial work done. I talk about it as between the programs, interstitial tissue in a way, right? I understand that. But if Gravity can't get its work funded, that's concerning. If they are not able to fund their work, and that has global across the country and across federal agencies and a foundation community. I mean, I hope that there are foundations, and I know there's some that are considering it, how to support the Civitas Gravity work, but it's got to happen because this won't progress without this, and it's skunk work, the way it's skunk works. I don't know how we get it funded, but without it, it's going to be really difficult to do it at scale. So who put in this, Eric, what is the European stuff here?
It's their, I believe they have a whole consent model as well, and it's part of their information, International Data Spaces Association information model. And so that's a whole, I guess that's their EU funded, you know, I don't know, 15-year project on this whole thing. So, I mean, it's just a good resource for like your CCO.
As students work.
What? Sounds like somebody came off there. All right, well, thank you for presenting. You know, I'm excited to see the work continuing to flow out. And as I said, the next couple of weeks, we've got sessions set up that I think should be complementary to what's happening here in terms of some of the tools and ideas and concepts. I mean, there's a criminal justice piece that Arizona is doing amazing work on diversion programs. It's really great. In fact, if I can post a conversation that we had, I would put that out there. Mark is on the call from DC. I don't know if you've heard more about that at all or if you've seen that yet.
I haven't heard about it, but I'd love to learn more, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just an early conversation with, an initial conversation. It took a long time to get that together with Christy Love, but it happened. So it'll be great to be able to bring that into this conversation in Hennepin. Okay. Oh, thank you, Rita. Ocean Alliance of Chicago. The gravity projects. Okay. Okay, that's good to know. Great. All right.
Rita, I'll be in touch. I was hoping to see if I can get another 1 or 2 added to the affinity groups in the fall, but I'll talk to you privately on that.
Eric, would you mind just saying, before we sign off here, just a overview of the affinity groups within that? What does that look like? I've been hearing about it sort of, if you're at liberty.
I mean, I don't think I could say anything more than a lot of people in this group, but you know, it's the Gravity has some funded efforts continuing on through the fall. So it'll start in September, on September 29th is the kickoff. And then they'll be, I think, finishing before end of year. And the idea is that they'll be taking actual communities and piloting some of the Gravity standards. I don't know which, like, if they're tackling all the domains or picking and choosing, but, you know, within social determinants of health. But yeah, that's the idea, is actually put this into practice on the ground.
And that's the focus of the affinity group's effort.
Yeah, I think they technically call it the affinity pilots or something like that. I can't remember.
And that sits under where? Under?
It's just Gravity funded.
Just under Gravity. Okay. Okay. Oh, thank you, Brian. All right then. Thanks everybody for today. We'll see you next week. Talk to you in between.
Thanks everyone. Thanks for letting me present. Thanks.
Thank you, Connor. Thanks everyone.